When we're looking to understand the anatomy of the mid-tarsal joint, we need to understand a series of important ligaments that can be confusing. So let's break it down first with some of these models. Looking at the foot from above, when we think about the mid-tarsal joint, that's essentially the joint that's going to separate the talus and the calcaneus from the navicular and the cuboid. And the series of ligaments that we're looking at dorsally are going to be your dorsal calcaneocuboid ligament. Then we have something called the bifurcated ligament. It has two parts. The lateral part is basically the part that's going to go from the calcaneus to the cuboid. We have the portion of that ligament that's going to go from the calcaneus to the navicular. Both of those together make the bifurcated ligament. Then we have a very strong band, this dorsal talonavicular ligament. It's very important for locomotion. It really keeps the talus to the navicular and gets you towards your pronation. So far we've got this calcaneocuboid ligament on the lateral and dorsal aspect. We've got the bifurcated ligament with our calcaneocuboid and the calcaneonavicular, and we have the dorsal talonavicular ligament. Then to support the talar head, we have that arm that goes around the supromedial band of the spring ligament. As we go underneath the talar head, I'm going to turn the foot over now, and we're going to appreciate that medial plantar band. We're seeing some of the supromedial spring ligament. Notice how much it invests under the undersurface of the talar head. So this is a sheet-like ligament that's moving from the medial side of the talus to the navicular and wraps underneath and then blends towards the medial plantar oblique and then the inferior plantar oblique. So that's what's going on for the mid-tarsal ligaments dorsally. Plantarly, when we look at this a little bit more carefully, we can talk about things like the long plantar ligament and the short plantar ligament. The short plantar ligament is a deep, short ligament, basically spanning between the calcaneus and the cuboid. And we have the long plantar ligament, the plantar aspect of the calcaneus. And then it's going to act similar to the way the posterior tibial tendon attaches to the plantar bases of the metatarsals. So does the long plantar ligament. It's a very strong ligament, basically spanning second, third, and fourth metatarsal bases. Now let's look at it from the side, sagittally. First, let's take a look at this laterally, looking at that dorsal calcaneocuboid ligament. We're seeing the bifurcated ligament here. We're seeing that calcaneocuboid component and the calcaneonavicular component. And again, we're seeing a piece of that strong dorsal talonavicular ligament. Let's look at that now medially. What we see is some of that dorsal talonavicular ligament. We're going to move into that band and arm that's going to hug that talar head. That's the supromedial spring ligament. We're cutting down now to the posterior tibial tendon. Notice that the posterior tibial tendon is at an inferior aspect to the supromedial band of the calcaneonavicular spring ligament. So it's the spring ligament that attaches first to the navicular, and then you have the posterior tibial tendon. And on this side, you can see portions of the short plantar and long plantar ligament. Again, we'll talk about that more when we see the MRIs. Now, there was posting on Collective Minds that I loaded up because these were excellent images of some of this anatomy that we don't always see. So I wanted to share that with our RadPod squad so that we can make sure to understand what we're seeing here. But essentially, when I'm looking at this particular first sagittal image, I'm seeing a sagittal image that I'm at the calcaneocuboid articulation, and I'm seeing a ligament that's moving towards the navicular. So this is a portion of my bifurcated ligament. That's that calcaneonavicular portion. Now we can see this if we cross-section, if we take a coronal image of this and we look at what we're seeing here and we'll follow it back, we could see that there are two ligaments here, and this is that ligament going from the region of the calcaneus to the navicular. So that's part of your bifurcated ligament. Here you can see it even further in two parts. This is going to be the portion that goes to the cuboid. So this is both portions of the bifurcated ligament that originate along the calcaneus, going towards the navicular and going towards the cuboid. And now we can see a portion of the calcaneocuboid ligament. This is the part that moves dorsally. So this is, although we see it more laterally, we can also appreciate that it's a dorsal structure, and you can see that on T2 weighted images. A few more images were loaded, so let me just take a look at that. Here we're seeing the dorsal talonavicular ligament, a portion of it, and it, as we can see on the model again, that had quite a span to it. So when we're thinking about how large this ligament is, it's quite large, and it's often responsible for a lot of enthesopathy and changes that tell me biomechanical clues that I might be having trouble lifting my talonavicular to first metatarsal axis when I heel strike, and then I want to get from the heel strike through the phase of gait to pronation and toe off. That dorsal talonavicular ligament has a lot of work. Getting back to our images, what we can see here is actually the calcaneocuboid portion of the bifurcated ligament. And let's see what else we have here. And now we actually have a picture where you can see both of them. So if I did a cross-sectional image, that's where I would be seeing these two guys. But getting back to where I can see them here, we now know that the ligament that's going from the calcaneus to the cuboid is a portion of the bifurcated ligament, and this one's going from the calcaneus to the navicula, the other portion of the bifurcated ligament. And again, that calcaneocuboid, dorsal calcaneocuboid ligament. So that's what they cover in this tutorial, and I just wanted to make sure that we understood in RadPod Squad what those ligaments were. And we'll take a look at the spring ligament in other tutorials and the short plantar and long plantar in other tutorials. Just to go through some of the examples that are here, what we're seeing here is sprain of our dorsal calcaneocuboid ligament. Let's see what we've got here. Here we can see the bifurcated ligament is poorly defined, so you could call that a high-grade sprain or partial tear. When I see it as poorly defined without fluid going through the gap, I tend to call it a partial tear. Of course, we'll take each case in turn. Oops, sorry. Here we can see a portion of the calcaneonavicular portion of the bifurcated ligament and a small bone contusion that they're pointing out with an asterisk. Here we can see sprain of our dorsal talonavicular ligament, a very common thing to see, some stress-related change of the dorsal navicular. And look at the dorsal subluxation. Actually, probably this would be an avulsion. Let's just take a look at the cheat sheet here. A mildly displaced avulsion from the dorsal talar head. So what we can appreciate here is the dorsal subluxation of the navicula. We can see the irregularity of the ligament and the avulsed fragment with bone marrow edema. And let's see what that looks like on an x-ray. We often see things along the dorsal talonavicular region on an x-ray. So it gives us a clue to what we might be saying about that when we understand actually what is seen on MRI. Fantastic. So I hope that's been helpful.